Hello Isla, this film is for you. Do you remember the day that we went to the Museum of Childhood with your cousins? It seemed to me the whole world was there. It was very noisy and confusing. It was difficult to look at the dolls' houses with everyone around me. I expect you found it distracting too. I had my camera with me and I thought it would be interesting to make a film of the dolls' houses, and then you could look at them later without all the other people around you. Let's get some basic things out of the way right at the beginning. Look at these boys playing quite happily with the museum's playhouse. Dolls' houses are not just for girls. Boys like them too. Dolls' houses are not houses for dolls or just toys for people to play with. Originally, doll's house or baby house just meant a small house. Now here's a good place to start. This is the Fisher-Price house, like the one that your daddy and your aunts used to play with when they were about your age. It has a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen and a bathroom. It's made of hard, durable plastic, and Grandma and I still had some of the pieces only a few years ago. We also had the Fisher-Price Village. It was popular with the boys because when you turned the handle on top of the fire station, you got a loud fire siren. The police station had a jail where you could put one of the little people and lock it up and then let them out again. The oldest dolls' houses that we know about were made in the 16th century, more than 400 years ago. The oldest was made for Albrecht V, Duke of Bavaria. The next oldest was made in the 17th century by Philipp Hainhofer, a merchant of Augsburg, for Philip II of Pomerania-Stettin. These men wanted to show off their real houses, their wealth and their social standing. In the 16th century, wealthy merchants would often have a cabinet in which they kept curiosities and brought them out to show and entertain their guests. In Holland, dolls' houses were built into cabinets on a stand, like this one. This doll's house is just a kitchen built into a cabinet. The two arches at the back are the cooker and the oven. A fire, usually a wood fire, would have been built in one arch to heat up the whole oven. The cooking would be done on the top. Bread and pies would have been cooked in the other arch like an oven. The dresser is very handsome. Its decorations were turned on a lathe and then split down the middle and two halves put on in different places to decorate the cabinet. In the cupboard underneath there are posies. They would have been put around the house to disguise the nasty smells. Today you don't usually see a pestle and mortar in a house, but in the 17th century they were essential for grinding up herbs for cooking and for making medicines and for making colours and even for beauty preparations. The cane baskets also caught my eye. These look very grand and delicate, but wicker baskets would have been used for all sorts of things in the house and elsewhere in the countryside. In the museum. It's a small version of the larger dolls' houses in the Nuremberg Museum. According to the records of the time, these dolls' houses were made and used to teach young girls how to run a household. On the right-hand door there's a portrait of a man. He is Martin Luther, who founded the Protestant church movement, and it shows the house was owned, or at least made, by a Protestant family. On the left-hand door there's a silver unicorn, although it's lost its horn. In those days most people could not read, so they used signs outside their houses to show what sort of business they were in. We still use pub signs like this today. The unicorn shows this was the house of an apothecary where you could buy medicines, like a chemist today. Look at the windows on the left. They're glass, but not like our glass. In those days, glass could only be made in small round panes, and they were not easy to see through. It was like looking through the bottom of a bottle. To make a window, lots of these small round panes had to be held together in leading. They were very expensive, and only the wealthiest merchants could afford them. This kitchen is the working kitchen. See the dog and the chickens on the floor. There are large vats of something on the right-hand side there. They're probably of wine and oil used for drinking and for cooking. This table is made of metal, but the real one would have been made of wood. This house has a second kitchen. It was used for entertaining visitors and guests, like a dining room and a lounge put together. There are lots of mugs with lids. They're called Steiners and are very typical of Germany even today. The two chairs are interesting. This design is what we call a Windsor chair, and it was once a famous industry based in High Wycombe. Look at the table. It's not held together with glue. The joints are tightened up with wedges. And the stretchers don't just keep the legs apart, you also use them as footrests. At the back of the room is a slightly open door. It's a privy. Toilets as we know them didn't exist until late in the 19th century. Toilets were just holes in the ground called privies and had to be dug out and emptied by hand. In townhouses the privy was often under the stairs, and it was emptied at night by men especially employed for that purpose. This is the family's private living room. In the middle of the room is a spinning wheel for making knitting and weaving strands out of sheep's wool. This one is a simple treadle type. It was made on a lathe by a turner. At this time, the turner who works on a lathe was in a different guild from the joiners who made the chairs, and one would not have been allowed to work with the other. In the corner at the back is a huge metal box. It's a stove, and it would have been used to keep the room warm. Often chimneys and stoves were half in one room and half in another, so that both rooms were heated at once. Clever, huh? The books are far too large for this room, but they are real miniature books, and you can read them, if your eyesight's good enough. In this room they are prayer books. In the museum, this house is displayed empty with no furniture, but actually it's quite interesting. The 12-pane sash windows show it was intended to be an 18th century Georgian house when it was made sometime in the early 19th century. It was bought for £60 and refurbished in the 1960s. The museum's pictures show the rooms were furnished in slightly different styles for the 20th century. The living room is in the style of the 1950s. The deep button bergère chairs in the living room and the balloon-back dining room chairs would have survived from an earlier Victorian age. The kitchen is a mixture of 1930s paraffin stove with an Art Deco sink unit, but the fridge and the mixer tap belong to the post-war period. This mixture of styles with older surviving furniture is typical of a real English house. This is a recent house made by a German company. It's very different from the hobby and training houses of earlier eras. The furniture is all in the same style, simple lines, flat colours for easy manufacture. The furniture design and the interior design reflect the needs of manufacturing more than the way people lived in it. The house comes apart room by room, so you can rearrange the rooms as you like. The lifestyle is very like a middle-class but modern house today. We can see the ironing board and the vacuum cleaner, but all the labour-saving appliances, the fridge, the washer, the dryer and so on, are hidden away behind standard kitchen units. Spot the computer in the corner with the office chair. I would have expected to see a TV and stereo system on the shelf unit, where the drawers are. There's lots more to look at in the houses that I've shown you. You could look at the bedrooms and the bathrooms, which are very interesting. There are also different sorts of houses. Some of them are shops. There are also dolls' houses in other places. The National Trust has some, and there are collections in America and private collections in this country as well as on the continent. The American doll's house and its development are distinctively different from the English and European houses. There are a few books on dolls' houses and on dolls' furniture, and you can find them in the museum bookstore. There is a large industry in dolls' house miniatures and a market for people who make and furnish their own dolls' houses. Enjoy!